AC-20, Autocannon 20, Battletech Inner Sphere. This weapon is the most powerful in the game. So how are we going to leverage this? And is it as easy as just literally rolling or walking up there and scoring a hit? Or is there something a little bit more refined to it? I want to give you a checklist of considerations. And as always, certainly you're going to field an Autocannon 20, and how you fill out and answer this checklist is going to depend upon your play style, your Battletech play style, and the type of mechs and machines and infantry that you want to employ with that. You know kind of my philosophy. Well, I should say in wargaming philosophy, there are two main points that I tend to follow. And this is an extension of my player personality, of course, but this is true in Battletech and Warhammer 40K, Wings of Glory, Chain of Command, other systems that I enjoy playing. First is that big guns never tire. A very impressive Warhammer 40K quote, that's true. You can have your fancy tactics, you can have your builds and loadouts, but in a war game, the dice are key, and there's no arguing with guns that do massive amounts of damage. So I tend to naturally gravitate towards the big guns on there. And the second is, when in doubt, attack. If you're in a position on the table, wargaming, you think you know what your opponent's doing. I say think because you never really know before we even layer in the dice and other aspects of the game that throw in some random. And from there, you're not really sure, just attack. Attack. That's either going to force your opponent to reveal their plans early or counter you, or it's just going to start to shift the momentum on it. And an Autocannon 20 in Battletech fills both of these roles amazingly. So the first thing with the AC-20, it's going to attract the hate. It's going to attract a lot of attention on the gaming table simply because it's massive amounts of damage. The only thing that seems to come a close second, in my opinion, in terms of inner sphere tech, would be long-range missile carriers. When these units show themselves, you have to intercept them. You have to be able to take them out and deal with them. Ironically, in Autocannon 20, you want to deal with it at long range. You don't want to get into that range and firing arc. And a long-range missile carrier, the exact opposite, you want to engage at short range. So can I really be angry when my opponent targets my Hunchback or goes after my Cyclops or some of the other mechs that might mount Autocannon 20s? Can I be upset when they engage my Demolisher tank? I can't, simply because this is just the nature of the game on there. They have to allow that. So the counter for that in your list, what's your interception unit? What is your blocker type unit? What is that unit that when your opponent moves in, you're going to prevent them from taking out your Autocannon 20? Now, this is not a one-to-one trade. This is not like I'm running forward with my Hunchback and, I don't know, you're going to engage with some other mech and I have to destroy it. It might just be slowing the mech down, the opposing mech down. It might be keeping something in place. It could be some hovercraft that move out and attack, a delaying action. It could be a medium mech or a light mech that goes out. A great example might be a Jenner trying to get rear armor. That's going to pull someone off really, really fast. It could be a ring of infantry and fighting vehicles. I mean, there's so many things. Of course, you're not going to spend so much battle value in this blocking type unit that it's more than the effectiveness of your autocannon, but something to hold off as the autocannon is getting into position. The second aspect is you have to get point blank range. You have to get up there for that. So how are we going to do that? What is the delivery system? Now, the delivery system might be something somewhat fast. I say somewhat because an Autocannon 20 is a big gun, has a lot of weight, ammo and all that, so it's not something that we're going to see on a light mech with massive amounts of speed. But even mechs like the Hunchback, okay speed for a medium mech, it's going to take a little while to get up there. So you need to make sure, this is what's called an anchor point. If I'm going to have my Autocannon 20 and run it up the table, I can't spend game turns chasing you around. I can't spend turns like I run to the left side of the table, then you run across to the right, so I follow you on the right. Besides the fact I'm not spending turns actually shooting that autocannon, that means those are more turns that I'm going to be subject to your long-range firepower, other aspects. Maybe you bypass my blocking unit. So I need to look ahead of time as best I can, and this goes back to when in doubt, attack. Look and say, based on the mission, based on the terrain. On every terrain map, especially with the hex maps, a lot of us play on the hex maps, there are, and this is done, tactically, obviously, but this is true of any battlefield, there are certain key terrain pieces, woods for cover, hills for elevation on there, level 2, level 3 elevation, maybe water. Based on the mission, that these are going to be the hot spots. These are going to be the places where you want to go and you want to dominate with your mechs. A perfect example would be if there's a little level 3 ring of hills, or maybe even higher, and you get a missile carrier back there or a longbow, you've got indirect gold, especially if it's towards the middle of the map. You're going to radiate out. So clearly that is going to be a key point. You need to identify these key points and send your autocannon 20s towards those key points, not the opposing mechs, not the vehicles. Send them to where your opponent is going to be. That is a guarantee to intercept. And now your opponent has a choice. So give up that key terrain piece. I don't want to engage an autocannon 20 or multiples of them. So give up the terrain piece. Okay. From that point of view, they will. You're not using the autocannon 20, but you've gained a material advantage of terrain on there. The next piece on the checklist, there's a couple of mechs that utilize dual AC-20s. King Crab comes to mind, the KC. Is it the Kodiak? I'm testing my knowledge. There's a few. But the challenge here, what's important in Battletech, especially in Battletech, but again, this is true of any war game, is this idea of redundancy. Meaning, based on my weapon systems, there's a lot of what-ifs that have to happen with the dice before I score a really solid hit on you, a critical hit, a damaging hit. I can do certain things to modify it, right? So first, I have to be in range. If I'm in range, then I have to actually hit you. And I'm going to have movement modifiers working against me. I'm going to have terrain modifiers working against me. And then after I hit, I have to, at the luck of the dice, hopefully score a hit on a location that would be beneficial to me. Maybe to blow an arm off or weaken an area or look, if I had a choice, of course, a headshot. So those what-ifs are influenced by the dice. The range, I try to get into range as fast as possible. Positioning on the table, I try to catch you where you're not in cover or you're not in woods. So I'm trying to bring those modifiers down. Maybe I spend battle value and jack myself up with a better gunnery skill. I try to bring that down. In terms of hitting, maybe I have tech, targeting computer, although we are talking inner sphere right now. As soon as you get into targeting computers, there's actually much more effective weapons than autocannon 20s. That's a separate kind of podcast vlog on there. But getting the modifiers down based on my positioning, if I want to try to go for your right arm, blow it off, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a T-bolt and there's ammo in there and I want to explode it, then can I move my mech so I'm attacking you on that right kind of hex bank moving in? So I'm doing my best to bring these modifiers down. You're doing your best to bring the modifiers up, keep them up. When it's your turn, we switch. We're doing the exact opposite. Redundancy is where if I have two or more shooting weapons profiles, it increases the chances of making through all these what-ifs with the dice and hitting it. Autocannon 20, based on the massive amounts of damage and the weight and the tonnage, it puts literally everything into one shot. So we don't have redundancy. What that means is, especially since it's such a close in-range weapon, location is important and other weapons are important. It's not redundancy, but it makes up for it. And it increases the effectiveness of the autocannon 20. Let's look at the Hunchback, because I think it's an amazing machine for medium mech. The autocannon 20 means I'm going to try and get as close as I can. As soon as I get really close, rule number one with an autocannon 20, by the way, I should have started the podcast with this. As soon as you're in range, you start shooting. You're in range. You need 12s to hit. You don't even have to crunch the modifiers. You know it's going to be 12s. Then you start shooting. As soon as you roll those autocannon 20 dice, even though you need a 12, I've been there. I'm there every week. Your opponent's like, please don't hit. I know Fritz needs 12s. Please don't hit. Please don't hit. I'll take a headshot later. Please don't hit. And you want to have that, whether you want to call it tricknology, psychological warfare, psyop, whatever it's going to be on there, it's true. So you want to start rolling those dice and get your opponent thinking with that. But as you close to medium and short range, having other weapons, medium lasers, picking mechs that have medium lasers or short-range missile packs that can now go to work on there, that increases the effectiveness of that autocannon 20 because you're already going to be so close. Getting as close as you can to cut down the modifiers means often you are point blank, hex to hex on there. Going back to the Hunchback, and it does have the medium lasers. Now for 1 hex away, the location of that autocannon 20 means I can shoot that, I can punch, I can kick on there. Utilizing it, again, I don't have the redundancy, but at least I can complement other phases of the game, other weapons profiles that are going to take into account that if that thrust with my autocannon 20, the core tactic, the key tactic is me getting to point blank range, what are other things that are really good at point blank range? Let me select mechs that are going to utilize that because tactically that's the position I want to be in. So a couple of ideas. The checklist in there, autocannon 20 is somewhat simple as in, dude, just get close and roll the dice. But there's a lot of little what ifs and a little bit of mech piloting finesse to get you up there.